Now I'm still pretty new to all this, so you can imagine my surprise when I received an email from a company based in Germany who make pre-formed foam models, asking if I would be up for doing something with one of their models. Challenge accepted. Hi guys, I hope you're good, and welcome to Creative Cuts, a channel where I build, paint and create things. In this video I'll try to up the stakes and think outside the box in order to create the most ambitious diorama I have built to date. Now before we begin, I just want to say that I have no ties to the company, so all my opinions about the products are my own. Ziterdes sells all manner of goodies for your tabletop, from sci-fi fortresses to dwarven kingdoms made out of cast foam, as well as a ton of little embellishments for your tabletop games. So when my contact Tommy reached out to me and said make a list, I looked at the website and pretty much wanted to order everything, but I settled on this ruined monastery, a few resin figures and some paper plants. Something that may represent a normal order for someone using the company for the first time. The box arrived, it was well packed, and as you can see the level of detail is great in my opinion. They come pre-primed so you can use them straight out the box and essentially be placed directly onto your tabletop. But what interested me most about these models was the fact that they were made out of foam, easily cut and adapted. I picked up these little praying monk guys because they kind of fitted into the theme I had in mind. But I was equally excited about the paper plants that I'd ordered because I've always been eager to try them. I ordered most of the range, and again I have to say I was really impressed with the level of detail. They're very finely cut and have a good colour variation in the design. So I picked up a couple of packets of ferns, and these are printed onto this kind of slightly glossy laser paper, I guess. The level of detail is great, and as you can see, sort of really mottled colour works well. But yeah, I'm sure we can fix that slightly reflective finish later on. And then I picked up some stinging nettles, and these look a little similar to the ferns, but then I got some bull reeds. And what's referred to as a Virginia creeper, but some kind of creeping vine, ivy type. And again, they're just printed out and easily removed. I'm not sure what this is, but butterbur, but yeah, I'm not really sure. I had no idea. Maybe you can let me know in the comments below, but it looks great. Again, bit of variation, bit of colour difference. Now this one I was slightly confused with. I'd ordered them as water lilies, but on the picture it looks like daffodils to me, and inside they look like daffodils. Maybe I'm missing something, but either way, nice daffodils. And here's a quick idea about some of the products Ziterdes makes. So if this would be of interest to you, then go check out their website, show them some love. Links in the description below. But most of all, I'd like to thank Tommy, who watched one of my videos and reached out to me and basically took a chance on a channel that's only a few months old. If you would also like to support the channel, you can take a moment to hit the like button, subscribe to stay up to date with future videos, and get involved in the comments below. And now this is the point where the story takes a distinct left turn. On one of my many walks, I came across an amazing piece of tree. I had a rough idea of what I wanted to do with this build, but when I found this tree, some of the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. Now I wanted to do something special, something that pushed my boundaries of anything that I'd attempted before. So I wanted to see if you could build a diorama in a tree. I broke it apart and glued it back together to fine-tune the shape I was after. But how it would all fit together eventually was still a complete mystery to me at this point. So, there was nothing left to do but get out the glue gun and start piecing some more chunks of wood onto this base. I tried to select some pieces that would approximately fit the right size, and then while the hot glue was still wet, I just sprinkled a little bit of bark dust to further help hide the joint. And then I selected more and more pieces and tried them to see if I could find one that would fit nicely, and just repeated this process as the shape began to naturally evolve, all the while contemplating how all the pieces would fit together. So while this thought process was taking place, I decided to turn my thoughts to a base. So I picked up this nice piece of wood. It's just an offcut from the local DIY store. And I picked up some 10mm threaded rod and some locking nuts. And I thought these would work as a nice stopper underneath. And then by using a regular nut, I was able to adjust the height to the angle that I wanted the piece of tree to sit at. And this with a washer just gave me a little bit more surface area. And then once I had a height that I was happy with, I took a measurement. And I'd also picked up some mild steel tubing. And I cut these to size, and these just act as a nice sleeve to hide the thread. Then I drilled some holes and held my breath and carefully lowered the base onto the washers. I added some washers to the top and fastened these down with some nuts to hold these in place. Then I got the old faithful glue gun and just sealed up any gaps with my trusted bark dust technique. And while I was at it, I just pieced in a few of these smaller chunks just around the junction of where the metal rod meets the underside of the base, just to keep everything nice and tidy. And next I felt the model was a little too big to work with, and I really wanted to see how truly adaptable it was. So I got a sharp blade and began to carefully cut it into pieces. This worked reasonably well. It's very similar to cutting XPX foam for those who have experience with that. I just went round and neatened up all the edges, cutting off any loose bits of grass. And then I took things a step further and wanted to test if I could actually separate a section of wall. And this worked out a treat, really. I glued this in place and then just made a few more slight adaptations. Just added in a piece underneath just to add some support and trimmed areas as needed. And then found a nice spot for this and glued it on. Now I'm not going to pretend that this process was as quick as it looks in the video. I'll be honest, I played with these separate pieces probably for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and that's no exaggeration. But sometimes that process is part of the journey, you know. But after 5 hours of feeling like I'm not going anywhere, I had a brainwave and found a solution in making a small bridge and a connecting staircase to join the two components together. And I added a little bit of support underneath just to give the bridge something sturdy to sit on. Now it's important to always make sure your surface is nice and level. A little boat level like this is good to have. And then I began to craft out some small stairs These are just slices of XPS foam. And as I was doing this, I began to feel a strange sensation of some old, ancient, arcane power slowly coursing through the air around me. And with this newfound energy, as if by magic, some steps magically appeared. And things are already starting to take some shape. Nice. Next I took some balsa dowels, cut these down to size, and fixed these down with some hot glue. Then I glued the little monk guys down, and then I went through my collection of pieces of bark and started to find some pieces that would nicely hide the margin. And this slowly evolved into building a whole sort of floating island type cliff edge, for want of a better description. Then I took some sculptor mold. It's a fantastic product. Basically it just adds some water and you've got a lovely moldable plaster based paste, and just with a little wooden stick, just spreading this around, filling up some gaps, but leaving some texture as well, as this creates its own sort of rock formation pattern. And I think the difficult part about this was really just trying to make all the different materials blend and feel as if they're working in harmony with each other. After everything was dry, I got some black primer and just carefully gave it a light dusting of black into most of the darker recessed areas. I was trying to preserve some of the wood colour underneath, and then I'll take some grey primer and just give it a really light coat just from above, slightly angled position, often referred to as a zenithal highlight. And then, as if by magic, more rocks started to appear. So I seized on the opportunity and just with some Mod Podge, just some glue basically, decided to add to this scene and sprinkle in little bits of stone and cork and other small bits and pieces. And then just with a small piece of scenery glue, just gave everything a nice little coat just to bed everything in. After this, I took just a ballpoint pen and began to carve a stone pattern into the bridge that I'd already built. And I tried to do this in a way and a scale that kind of tied in with the existing foam products that I was sent, so everything would blend nicely together. And I just took my time and slowly worked on sort of random individual stone shapes. And I put some pieces on the stairs, just added a few chips and scratches here and there. And then I made up a wash of some brown and black ink with some acrylic medium and some water, a little drop of dish soap, and started to basically wash most of the surfaces. Now what this does, it really helped break up the monotone colour of the primer underneath, and as I applied this in sometimes thicker or thinner coats, it really allowed the colour variation and randomness that you find in nature to begin to appear. And to emphasise this further, I came in neat just with a few drops of pure ink, and this again just adds to that colour variation. Then I got my Dremel and started to attack these little monk guys, because after thousands of years some damage will have occurred, I'm sure. And then I just started to come in with, I guess, what you could call a thick dry brush. It's most of the paint removed from the surface of the brush, but still retained quite a lot. And then just really relying on the amount of pressure that I'm applying to the surface to judge how much paint I'm applying to any one specific area. And then this, what will be a little gully of a stream, I just darkened off with some black ink. And then I made up a secret brew of some various different colours of flock. And there's nothing special about this, it's just what I had lying around the studio. And then began just with some watered down PVA, just applying this all over. And just in stages, erring on the side of caution, just giving our rocks a good healthy dose of moss. And I just slowly repeat this, again just not putting too much down at any one time. And again, just the colour variation just really helps things feel that little bit more natural. Then I cut out all the little paper plants that I was sent, and I'd also picked up these strange, like rubberized plants for aquariums, I guess would be the best way to describe them, but I got them at the local pet shop and thought these would make some great river weeds. Then I started one by one to place the plants, and as if by magic, more plants slowly grew. And I had so much fun applying this creeper, I have to say, and in the final product I think it looks really great. And I just took some tufts of grass. Now these were initially the sort of wrong colour. I'd ordered them online and had them lying around in the studio for ages, but they were kind of green and red and it looked strange, so just with the paint applied with an airbrush I soon altered the colour into something that was more pleasing for me. And then just with some glue I came in and with little strands of polyfibre from Woodland Scenics and some foliage I began to create these little vines and plant life. And then Ziterdes also sent over a little box of this kind of green foliage, I guess you could call it. And it looks like it's made up of sort of ground up bits of small foam, but when placed in situ, it looks fantastic. I really have to say, it looks really cool. And now for a really fun part. It's something that I'd never tried before, but always had desperately wanted to, and that's to work with resin. Like I said, I'd never worked with it. I didn't know which products were good. Sure, there's many videos, but I found some reasonably priced on Amazon. Thought I'd give it a go and just see what happened. So I poured equal amounts into separate cups and then mixed these together. Mixed everything for a good 5 minutes and then just added a couple of drops of colour just to give it a bit of a tint, but still retain some of that translucency. And this was so satisfying, I have to say. I poured a little down the rock face to create a waterfall, and then just with a flame torch just gave this a light dusting. Oh, Icarus flew too close to the sun. Sorry, Tommy. And just added some leaves and little bits and pieces. Sorry, forgot myself there for a moment. So the journey continues, and I began to glue little bits of roots and other sticks that I'd collected from my little travels. And once these were fixed into place, I just gave these a little coat of PVA, added some foliage, sprinkled on some flock, and really bedded everything together. Now came another really ambitious part of this build. I wanted to build a really big tree, but didn't want to go down the wire route. You can build trees with wire and they look really good, but I wanted to just try something different. And from my previous build, the Star Wars diorama, I got lots of ideas from working with segments of trees, and I wanted to put these into practice. If you haven't seen that video, there's a link above now, and go and check it out. Maybe you'll learn something, maybe it's interesting for you. So I cut this branch into pieces and began to remodel it just with a little pin glued into place, just to give it some structural support, and started to play around with the shape and see how I'd imagine the tree to look. And this was a process. It involved lots of little journeys looking for the particular shapes of sticks, and it's amazing how you become almost an expert in different types of trees and the types of branch shapes that they'll provide for you. But yeah, it's all part of the learning curve, I guess. So I just continued this process, just gluing little bits of pieces together, slowly pinning these in. Then I, just with some filler, just filled in some gaps, and with a coat of primer, this looked really cool. I retained a lot of the original texture from the wood. The unsanded filler actually gave its own texture that almost looked a bit like wood. Then I took a reasonably pigmented wash and just began to cover the whole surface of the tree. And on top of this wash, once it's dried, I just gave it a light dry brush just to bring back out that texture. And then just with some bits of sea foam, I began to further extend the outer edges of the tree. Now, if you've not worked with sea foam before, it's a fantastic product. This is my first time working with it, if I'm honest. But I wanted to give it a go. I'd seen how it can work, and I wanted to see if it could work in this situation. Once again, I gave this a quick prime and then came back over the top with some brown ink just to begin to give the branches some colour. And then just with some spray, I sprinkle some slightly coarser foliage material over the top. And this beds down on the sea foam fantastically. And then I made a whole bunch of leaves. Now, don't be fooled, this is not the whole amount of leaves that I ended up making. I significantly underestimated how many leaves a tree would hold, but that's a different story. So just with a light coat of glue, I sprinkled these on delicately, trying to not get too many leaves into one position. And then I've fixed some more of the 10mm rod into the base of the tree and drilled a hole and begin to screw this into the overall structure that we've built. Onto this, I then put some more roots, some more moss, some more bits of foliage, using the same techniques and processes I've already shown you. And that almost brings us to the end of our journey. If you've made it this far into the video and like what you've seen, you can consider subscribing, hitting the like button to show YouTube your appreciation, and share this video with anyone you think might find it interesting. Now, this journey started with an email, out the blue. A seed was planted, and slowly the idea grew and grew, until it had taken on a life of its own. I would like to sincerely thank Tommy from Ziterdes for taking a chance on me, and you can let him know what you think about the build in the comments below. Here's to the power of imagination. Enjoy.